Mine's getting there. Don't worry. We can catch up. We can catch up.
Yeah.
Gonna learn that. I think we're ready to roll.
He had a virus about 10 days ago.
You don't have
It was
to-
gone, but I just kind of now.
We're good.
Okay, we're all here.
She's good. All right. We're all friends here.
Okay, thank you.
I-
Right, got it.
Hi, everyone.
It's halfway.
I call this meeting to order. Madam the Clerk, please roll call, please.
Roll call. Chairperson, Mr. Abdul Haddis,
Present.
Vice Chairperson, Mr. John Paul Rea,
Present.
Ms. Hillary Chambers,
Present.
Ms. Sheila Coe,
Present.
Dr. Curtis Ivory,
Present.
Mr. Royce Manico,
Here,
and Mr. Brett Racing.
present.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Next item. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
thank you. Next item. The adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll support it, Mr. Chairman.
Motion been made and supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those who agree signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Certification of public notice.
SMART will hold the December 7th, 2023 Board of Directors meeting at 2:00 p.m. in the Buell Building located on 535 Griswold Street, Suite 600, Detroit, Michigan, 48226. This meeting is open to the public.
Thank you. Next item, item 6A, audit committee report.
JP, could you handle that one?
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry.
Thank you, Ryan.
It's
Sorry
got an
about
L
that,
on
Ryan.
there, but.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We met as an audit committee prior to the full board meeting earlier today. Had an opportunity to engage in some good conversation with our representatives from Plant Moran on the single audit for the authority. There's some tremendous news, not only to report in the good financial standing with unmodified opinions on multiple fronts. A tremendous amount of credit to Ryan and the entire financial team, along with Dwight and the entire leadership team. And a little bit later in the agenda, we will have an opportunity to approve said audit. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate
Any
it.
question on the audit committee?
And also would like to thank Mr. Rez and Mr. Manico for sitting on the committee also.
So noted, thank you. Item B, board meeting minute for October 26, 23.
Move to approve.
Support.
Motion been made and supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those who agree signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Item C, executive session meeting minute for October 26, 23.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Support.
Motion been made and supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those who agree signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carried. Item 7, public participation. Any person from the public like to make comment? What was at the time? 3 minutes or so? How many minutes?
Yes, well, you may step up to the podium. Please state your name and county, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, thank you. I'm Stephen Haring, Wayne County. I'm kind of here to say what I usually do, I'm not happy about how low these drivers are getting paid, I am happy to hear at least some union contracts are starting, and the conversations are making progress, but still, the bus service it's unusable. I don't really use it on a regular basis since I live downtown, but so many people do. And when I do, and try to catch the woodwork, it's usually like 20 minutes late, and that's it, or if it even shows up at all. So, it's just very disappointed. I've been very disappointed with Farrell's leadership and just the lack of progress. You know, I have an old map of SMART I bought from it was at least I believe from the mid-90s, and you know there was twice as many routes and you were able to get a bus on Woodward every 5 minutes. And, you know, nowadays you have to wait like almost every, well, they say half hour, but it's almost every hour. You know, it's just very disappointing.
Thank you.
Brother Cunningham, Detroit, Michigan. I've been advocating for a long time with public transit, and I rode the buses for 8 years. You know, had a license, but still rode the coaches. Now I'm a taxi cab driver, so I'm just transit all the way around, and I have an open ear. People just let me have it, just like, oh, this bus wasn't on time, that wasn't on time, it's always late. I never known SMART to be in such bad condition. You know, when I was taking it, it was like night and day. DDOT sucked and SMART was good. Now SMART is okay. I don't think it's fair that most of the drivers at SMART came from DDOT. I don't know if there should be a policy or some sort that y'all don't take a DDOT driver for 3 years, at least because they paid for the training. DDOT has a training program. They paid for the training for that driver. And I just don't think it's fair after a year or two, y'all pay more. You're going to snatch them. You know, DDOT is in very bad shape, and I attribute it to folks looking for them dollars. You know, y'all pay more, so they're going to come over to SMART. That's just what I see. And I know personally some drivers that left for the money and went to SMART. But DDOT has a training program, but they're down 120 drivers or something like that. I just think there should be something codified that you guys don't take DDOT drivers. Give DDOT 3 years to have that driver. They pay for the training. And also the audio systems that used to say, have your mask on, have your money ready. Maybe that can be used also to talk about SMART hiring in all positions. Because usually people riding the bus are entry level wherever they're at, and they might want to change career fields. You know, it's a good opportunity to reach them without having to pay for advertising. You got this system on the coaches already. Again, thank the staff for what you've done so far. And hopefully this contract is closed soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Joel Batterman. I live in Detroit, and I'm engagement manager for Transportation Riders United, TRUE. In the season of gratitude, I want to begin by acknowledging the positive steps that SMART has taken this year. You've begun to get regular reports on staff hiring and retention, as we requested back in February. You've made a leadership change in the HR department, something we hope will be a positive. You've launched the SMART sounding board for riders to offer comments to staff. You've redoubled your efforts at recruiting operators, and you've begun to roll out transit service to more cities in Oakland County. That said, SMART has still not accomplished the most crucial step towards delivering reliable bus service for the region: negotiating a new contract with fixed route bus operators, a contract that will provide the pay increases necessary to attract and retain them. When I spoke to this board back in December 2022, I didn't expect that we'd still be without a contract a year later. Back then, I described the situation as an emergency. It's no less of an emergency now. I implore the board, when you go into closed session, to make it clear to SMART leadership, the contract must be settled or the survival of the entire organization is in jeopardy. Every day a contract is delayed is another day that riders are waiting in the wind and cold on buses that don't arrive because there's no one to drive them. So many previous riders have already given up on SMART service. Please use your voice and your power on the board to bring the negotiations to an end and deliver the reliable transit that this region deserves. Thank you all so much, and happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holiday to you.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Plowski. I'm a longtime transit activist and volunteer with Transportation Riders United. I'm also the vice chair for the Regional Transit Authority Citizens Advisory Committee. I'm from Southgate, Wayne County, and I'd like to echo some of the comments that we've seen here today from not just my colleagues and friends from Transportation Riders United, but also addressing some crisis that we have within the system. We all know that it took almost a year to get a contract. That is still something that we want to see. Going on my positive comments last meeting about all of the positive bus service here in Wayne County, it's not just here in Detroit that suffers a problem. It's nationwide. Over the last 2.5 months, I spent from all the Midwest cities going and checking out transit agencies, going back and forth from Cincinnati, making 2 trips to Cleveland, back and forth from Northern Kentucky, and also going back and forth from Pittsburgh and Columbus. One of the things I've seen is they're going through the same problem. It's not just SMART, it's everywhere. We need to have reliable bus service here in the United States of America, but not just there, it's Detroit. Detroit is the Motor City. We all are famous for our cars, but we're mostly famous for our decent transit service with that big lettering that says fast. It was a hit when it rolled out and it was reliable when it came out. But once we started to see the contracts go into jeopardy and bus service start to shift when COVID, that's when it started to decrease. That's when we really started to see low ridership, people starting to invest in cars. I'll admit, I drove my car and I can actually see it from the garage right next door. But I want to stop using that car. I want to keep it in the approach of my driveway and use transit. I have been able to lately. I've been able to use the 125, the 160, and the 140, no problem, down in Wayne County. The service has been amazing. And I'm not going to keep giving thanks to Safe and Bernard and his team because I can say that off the record. But one of the things that we need to see is we need to have a finalized contract. We're starting to see the steps to do that. And today I hope and pray that we can actually have a contract approved to where we can start to see better bus service and its survival. These folks right here are not just the front lines on this crisis. They're making a change and they're making a voice just like myself. We all just want better bus service. But echoing the positive comments, we've seen an expansion in Oakland County and Novi, Wixom, soon to be expansions in Rochester Hills and other areas, expansions in Bloomfield Hills. Also working on the SMART sounding board, an echo of Detroit's virtual community input meeting, to have citizens be able to voice their concerns about service. There are a lot of positive things that we've seen here at SMART, but those are just many of them. I'm very happy for all the progress that SMART has done over the last year, but 2024 is a big year. We have a lot to accomplish. We have a lot to fix. They're not just.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pulowski.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public?
Mike Rayner, the bus stop guy in Chesterfield Township. I had an interesting meeting at the Lance Crew School Board a while back. And as I pulled up to the building, I couldn't help but see the big school bus sitting there with a big banner, now hiring. And no surprise there, was there? My idea was to suggest, I mean, forever we've gone to driver training in high school, right? So we're all anxious to drive those cars. How about truck driver training? You know, we have an obvious absence of truck drivers besides the wage issue, which, you know, has been covered over and over again. But I think people are discovering, excuse me, that college is not the answer for everybody. It's always, let's go to college. Let's go to college. We'll do great. Yeah, we'll have that mortgage and not necessarily a roof over our head, but we'll have that mortgage. But how about the trades? We don't go into the trades, which pay tremendously. Trades where you are paid to learn. It's amazing. So anyway, they agreed that maybe truck driving school was not a bad idea. So maybe, whoops. Do I have it? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, real quick. Okay, so anyway, so much for that. The other thing is the adopt a stop. So I've adopted a couple of stops, one officially, one unofficially. And I was really disappointed when I found out that I was number 11 out of how many shelters do we have? 350, 400? So I was number 11. So why don't we push adopt a stop? I was in a meeting this morning with actually with Kevin Hertel, who is my state senator. And I said, you know anything about adopt a stop? He said, no, what's adopt a stop? I thought, gee, that's pretty bad when my state senator doesn't even know. So anyway, I think that's really very important. The other thing is talking about shelters. We need more shelters. Smaller shelters would be fine. We don't need the great big ones that have the dividers, so that nobody can lay down. We know what that's all about. You put the dividers in to make it difficult to lay down and rest overnight or whatever it happens to be. So anyway, we need to protect our riders. I put up some temporaries myself, and they told me to get rid of them. So how about if we have some official shelters just to keep the snow and the rain off of our riders? I mean, I think that's really kind of a no-brainer that I don't think is being acknowledged. So thank you very much. I am encouraged. I like a lot of the new ideas and the new people.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rayner, for your comment.
On the board. So thank you, folks.
Hi, my name is Ella Nikitin. I'm from Livingston County, Michigan. First of all, I wanted to say that I am glad to see progress involving the expansion to Wixom and Novi, specifically that concrete pads are being built. This is an important feature for accessibility. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, I also have two more things. First of all, it's very disappointing that this board meeting the public participation is either in person only or email. Like, why do we not have a Zoom option? I mean, this is Zoom right here. You can just let people join and then let them talk. It's really a no-brainer. We could do this. It's really not the same to have, some board member read an email out in a very monotone voice as it is to, have someone with energy speaking and hearing the voices of your riders. The other thing I wanted to say is to echo the same sentiments as these people over here. Bus drivers need better pay. We need more reliable service, please. I forgot to tell this story last time I was here. My first SMART board meeting back in June when I went here. After the board meeting was done, I went out to go catch the 462 to get home. First 462, it didn't show up. So second 462 didn't show up. I tried the 450, that one also didn't show up. I ended up having to call in a phone a friend to bail me out of there, which is, not the greatest situation after waiting 2 hours outside. It's really not that great. So please work on this. Better pay for drivers will help a lot with employee retention. That's and having the union contracts is out and signed as soon as possible is very important. This is, a crisis that we're facing out here in this region. Thank you.
Thank you. Any?
Hi, my name's Josh Lumsden. I live in Oakland County. I just wanted to come here and address the board as just a regular rider of SMART. I ride the bus to get to work, and I felt an obligation to share the status of the service, as a representative of some people that are not able to come out here. As the previous participants have mentioned, the route cuts are still going on, buses still aren't showing up. And when buses don't show up, people can't get to work. They lose their job. You know, people can't get to medical appointments. They have to reschedule. It's bad news. And I understand that it's a nationwide issue. It's an economy-wide issue. Every place is understaffed. That's true. But the bus showing up has a bigger impact than not being able to get your sandwich from McDonald's. You know, the bus not showing up should be treated with the same level of urgency as when hospitals don't have enough nurses, or when GM can't run its assembly line because it doesn't have enough employees. They treat that situation with a sense of urgency. And I believe that lack of functional public transit should be treated with the same level of urgency. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Lucas Lasecki, and I'm from Farmington Hills, Oakland County. And as 2023 comes to a close, I think it'd be fair to take a look back on this past year, a year that should have been a monumental year for transit here in Metro Detroit, but in fact saw very limited progress. Now, just to back it up, back to the middle of last year, we, your biggest fans, your biggest advocates, your most dedicated riders put our blood, sweat, and tears into a campaign to expand your services beyond the horizons of where it once was. We believed in you, and we convinced the voters of Oakland County to believe in you too. And even as your name was dragged through the mud by your biggest detractors, by the Yimbies of Wild Open Northwest and Oakland County, we defended you through and through. And as that passed, we celebrated. But as the clock struck midnight on January 31st, your labor contract with the ATU expired. And in the year since, no resolution has yet been achieved to that negotiation. And ever since then, the service has continued to deteriorate. It has become so unreliable to the point of unusability. Even some of your most dedicated advocates now are getting so burned out from the stress of riding smart and the uncertainty thereof that they're starting to give up. They're saying, I cannot trust SMART anymore. I can't do this anymore. And those of us who continue to stick by you, we've resorted to reverse engineering the schedules, spreadsheeting them out, and coming up with formulas to figure out whether or not buses are actually going to show up. It has gotten that bad. Well, I don't know how many languages I need to say it for you to believe me enough to take some action. So my fear is that even in this December meeting, as the contract is still unresolved, we'll come back, stroke of midnight this December 31st, nothing will change. Buses will still be canceled, people will still be left stranded in the cold, lose their jobs, and we'll be back here in January to do this all over again because nothing appears to be changing. You need to take meaningful action now. You needed to take meaningful action a year ago. You needed to take meaningful action at some point in the past, years ago even. This is a crisis. You need to act like it. And in closing, there are a number of people who have sent in written comments and would appreciate them being read into the record. Thank you.
Anybody else have a public comment?
Good afternoon, members of the board. Thank you for your time. My name is Stephen Hammondtree from East Point, Michigan, and I just want to echo some of what my previous commenters have said. It has been at least 24 months now since I've noticed reliability issues with SMART, and we need to get that fixed, and the new contract would really help with that. I don't really think short staffing is much of a nationwide issue anymore. I went to Chicago just before last weekend, and it ran so smoothly, so efficiently. I didn't see a single missed cut on the trips I tried to take while I was there. And that's the kind of thing I used to be able to say of SMART too, and I want that back. Additionally, public participation remotely, I want to see that back as well. I came here on the 563
that was a quarter hour late, and I got here well into public participation today. If it had been more late, I would not have had a chance to speak. Or what if it just doesn't show up? I won't get my chance to speak then either. The way the board went about it when they changed the rules felt like it was deliberately trying to make it harder for the public to speak. And that's just not really acceptable. But that is all, and I hope you have a great afternoon. And happy holidays.
Happy holiday. Anybody else? Now we close the public.
Mr. Chairperson,
Please.
I have 8 comments that were sent in via email. With your permission, I'd like to read those.
Proceed. Thank you.
All right. The first comment is from Christopher Stockman. It reads as follows. Hello. As a homeowner in Rochester Hills in his mid-20s who works in downtown Detroit, the proposed SMART route through Rochester and Rochester Hills would be very beneficial for myself and the area residents, as it would connect areas locally and connect the area to the rest of the SMART system. Additional routes along west and east roads would also be beneficial due to the high concentration of residents and many stores and businesses, especially on Auburn Road and Hamlin and Avon from Adams Road to DeQuinder Road. The new and upcoming Brooklands District Center on Auburn Road would greatly benefit from this, and public transport is something the area, as well as all of Metro Detroit, needs to move forward into in the future. The second comment comes from Mitchell Manty, and it reads thusly. This holiday season, I asked Santa for my bus to show up. I commute between Detroit and Birmingham for work, usually on the 462. In any other city in America, this would be one of the easiest public transit commutes imaginable. Between the 461 or 462 fast routes and the 450 and 460 local, there should be enough buses on the corridor to get me to work reliably and with minimal delay and discomfort. Should be. Of course, if that were the case, I wouldn't be writing you. Buses are cut so often, I can't trust that one will show up unless it is actively tracking on the transit app. This forces me to leave work early or late when I should be able to rely on a bus showing up at rush hour on a weekday. Indeed, the 450 suddenly stopped tracking twice last week, inconveniently once on my way to work and again on my way home. When a bus does show up, it is usually too crowded to sit. This is especially perplexing as I know SMART owns and runs articulated buses on Woodward, but for some reason, only the local routes. In any event, happy holidays. Us riders must have been awfully mean to you because this year we're not getting our wish. We're getting a lump of coal. Next comment comes from Mr. Thomas Yazbek. Greetings, SMART Board of Directors. Thank you so much for the work you put in overseeing SMART. Your roles are very important and you can count on my encouragement as you continue doing the right thing for Southeast Michigan's transit passengers. I would like to use this comment to express how wonderful it is that SMART has implemented sounding board sessions to hear the public's comments and concerns. I'm hopeful that these meetings will help strengthen SMART's relationship with the public and rebuild trust that has unfortunately been lost since the beginning of 2020. Please consider pushing staff to extend the time limit for these meetings and shift them to a time of day that works for more people. Another important thing SMART's board of directors has done recently is approve a new labor contract with the Teamsters bargaining unit. As I understand it, there are still 3 other units to go, including one to be approved at today's meeting. Please do your best to encourage prompt negotiation of the remaining contracts. Continued service interruptions due to staff shortages harm SMART's reputation and make it more difficult for SMART to rely on the public's support. Despite all the ongoing problems, I'm still excited to see SMART working to serve more of Oakland County, and I hope we can go into 2024 with a stronger SMART that's more reliable, more extensive, and more responsive to the public's feedback than it was the year before. All right, next comment comes from James Sobolewski. The comments are for the board meeting to be held, as I cannot. Okay, let's see. Hi, my name is James Sobolewski, and I live in Detroit. I have been a SMART writer for many years. First, I want to congratulate SMART on the recent Oakland County opt-in and service expansions. As you well know, this was a hard-fought battle. However, today the SMART system is in crisis and our recent wins are in jeopardy. It is no longer possible to rely on the SMART system to get where you need to go due to cancellations and driver shortages. Even the flagship fast Woodward route is not immune. Riders are being left stranded, waiting for buses that never show. I implore the board to communicate to SMART management the need for immediate resolution to union negotiations with the drivers union. Drivers need to be provided a significant pay and benefit increase to make the job attractive, to increase the driver staff to its full capacity, and provide the service riders rely on. I am sure you understand the gravity of the situation and will act quickly towards resolution. Thank you. The next comment comes from Jack Borman. Dear SMART, my name is Jack Borman and I live in Westland. I work at a grocery store in Southgate and take SMART to work every day. I have been late to work a lot of times because the 210 and 160 have been canceled. I fear that I may lose my job if this continues. SMART needs to stop canceling buses that I need to get to work. Thank you. Our next comment comes from Matt Burb. I have a suggestion. You should restore weekend service on the 140 and 250, especially with passenger traffic potential from the Henry Ford. The sign also needs to be replaced at the eastbound Eureka 20th stop on the northbound 140. Finally, add Sunday service on the 275, 375. Our next comment comes from Corey Rowe. Good afternoon, Chairperson Haddis, staff, and members of the board. My name is Corey Rowe, and I'm a regular SMART rider along the Woodward corridor between Auburn Hills and Detroit. I wish to echo the voices of my fellow riders in urging the board and the general manager to bring union negotiations to a conclusion. While I'm happy to see a tentative agreement in place for paratransit operators and customer service staff, as well as the potential agreement for the supervisors before the board this afternoon, fixed route operators and mechanics continue working under expired contracts and will have been doing so for a full year come December 31st. As you well know, the continued service crisis we are facing on a daily basis will not see a resolution until all contracts are brought in place. Your efforts to address this must be accelerated to ensure riders can come to rely upon your fixed routes again and that planned service expansions for 2024 are not delayed further. I would also urge you to reinstate Zoom participation as an option for board meetings, as the means for you to do so are still very much in place. You're using Zoom to stream the meeting right now. The new monthly sounding board is a fantastic opportunity for us to share our concerns with members of staff, and it does not go unappreciated, but we are still not afforded the opportunity to address the full board in an equally accessible fashion. Reading an email is not a substitute for hearing the voices of your riders. Your peers at the Detroit People Mover have publicly committed to full virtual participation, and I would encourage you to follow this lead. I'd like to end on a positive note and express my support for new business item C, the resolution to place an additional $20,000 or $200,000 towards the installation of concrete pads at bus stops. This demonstrates SMART's commitment to ensuring future fixed route service expansions are not inaccessible on launch, as was the case with Novi and Wixom. As advocates, we will be watching this closely to ensure you follow through and would encourage clear and frequent communication with the public on when landing pad installation can be expected to be proceed. Thank you, and I appreciate your time. The final comment comes from Chuck Altman. I want to acknowledge and thank SMART Management for holding the new sounding board meetings. I appreciate that us riders now have a venue not only for expressing concerns, but also where there can be a response and some discussion. On another note, as a daily SMART rider, I urge you to finally resolve the persistent problem of buses not showing up as scheduled. This problem has lingered for too long. When I have to be somewhere at a set time, it is stressful to know that the bus may not show up. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we close the public participation, move on to the chairperson report. I think you all know Mr. Farrell working on expansion services in some area, especially around the airport in Romulus. And that was good news received by the community. And to answer a lot of the question and concern we have today, that we, under the new leadership with Mr. Farrell, we look in all area where the service needed and see what SMART can do to expand the services to the people of the Tri-County. So with that, I move on to next item, to item 9, General Manager Report. Mr. Farrell.
Happy holidays to the board and members of the public. I will be brief. A lot of what we have been working on and I've been doing in particular will be covered in briefings that will be presented to you through the rest of the meeting, and a lot of it will be discussed in executive session. So with that, for the sake of time, I will pass it back to you, Mr. Chair, and we can go into the board briefings.
Thank you. We move to item 10A, HR hiring update. Okay, that Tiana.
Hello, everyone. Happy holidays.
Happy holiday to you.
So our hiring numbers over the last 30 days, this will be from October 24th to November the 24th. We had a grand total of 15 that included 4 fixed route operators, 2 paratransit operators, 1 mechanic, 3 CSSAs, 1 budget analysis, 2 ombudsmen, 1 digital marketing coordinator, and 1 paratransit on-demand clerk. So that brought us to a total of 15. With that, we did have some separations. With the separations, we had 2 fixed route coach operators, 1 CSO operator, which was part-time, 3 coach shelter attendants, and 2 mechanics, which brought us to a grand total of 8. SMART's overall numbers is 15 new employees, 8 separations. So we did have a positive 7 for the month of October 24th through November 24th, 2023.
Over the last
Thank you.
Over the last month, we've had 18 new paratransit and fixed route operators. In fact, the last class that graduated last week was first that I've seen, 7 ladies. And in fact, the majority of our classes have been women. So we continue both from myself down are pushing to recruit more and to get more people not only to come work here, but to continue to work here. In January, if it's the board's pleasure, we'd be happy to present some of the things and changes and benefits, for lack of a better term, that we have provided to all employees in an effort to attract and retain them, aside from wages. And so we'll make that presentation to you in January.
Good. Any question for Tiana or the general manager? Seeing none, we move to item 10B, flex update. Danielle, White House.
We can move this that. And he's shaking his head no. We are not.
Okay.
Next slide.
Next item, okay, so financial report, fiscal year 2023 audit presentation.
Thank you.
Moran, yes. You look like you follow me from place to place.
They're back.
We have our external auditors from Plant Moran on hand who are briefly going to go over their audited reports for fiscal year 23. So that is July 1, 22 through June 30, 23. We are going to go at a very high level, but feel free to stop us at any point or ask any questions if we can provide any additional detail. We did present this in a little bit more detail to the audit committee just a little while ago. So with that, I will turn it over to our friends at Plant Moran.
Okay, thank you so much for having us here today. My name is Pam Hill, audit partner with Plant Moran. Have with me here today Amy Taitar, who is a manager, and Keith Shmansky, who is a principal. All 3 of us are part of Plant Moran's national transit practice. So happy to be here today to talk about the results of the audit. So you should have in your packet a few documents. I believe they're going to be up on screen as well. We did go through it, as Ryan mentioned, in great detail with the audit committee. So we are going to give a very brief update on the audit, but happy to answer any questions. So with that, I guess before I turn it over to Amy, I did want to point out on the financial statement audit, we are issuing an unmodified opinion. So that's the highest level of assurance you can receive from your auditors. And basically what it means is that you can rely on the numbers as they are stated within the statements. So I'll turn over to Amy. She will touch on a very high level on the results of the audit.
Thank you, Pam. As Ryan said and Pam said, I will be brief and I am going to be going over the financial statements. So I'd like to just start off with the statement of net position. We keep scrolling here as Ryan gets there. Overall, the close of fiscal year 2023 net position saw about a 26 million increase, which corresponds with a 27 million increase in cash this year. This demonstrates that SMART has the liquidity and flexibility to deal with increasing costs while funding future capital needs, legacy costs, or anything else you're planning on doing. Moving to the statement of revenue, expenses, and changes in net position. Looking first at the operating revenue category, fares are up almost 9% or about 400,000. Operating expenses are up only about 2 million. So keep in mind here that the micro transit program is relatively new and has been ramping up. That expense line alone increased about 3 million. Now your non-operating revenue, which is below, is where you'll find all the major revenue sources for SMART. Local contributions, which would be property taxes, is up roughly 8%. Your next biggest revenue category here, state operating grants, was up about 6%. Lastly, this section also includes other federal and state grants. In total, non-operating revenue increased more than 8 million compared to last year. Although down below, you'll see capital contributions decreased as there was not as much capital spending funded with grants in 2023. Now, overall, as I opened with today, 26 million was added to net position this year, which leaves SMART in a good position to take on future needs and challenges. That's the brief that I will keep it, and I'll pass it on to Keith.
Good afternoon. I'd like to cover just the last couple small reports included in the packet today, starting with the Federal Award Supplemental Information or Single Audit Report. If we go right to the last page of that report, it summarizes the results of our audit work. And I'm happy to report there are both unmodified opinions on the financial statements as well as the Federal Awards Report. And there are no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies to report. So of the hundreds of hours we spent testing the books and records of SMART, as well as its compliance and spending of nearly $26 million of federal funds, we have no major exceptions or items that we need to bring to the board's attention. So it's a tremendous credit to the finance team and all of everyone here at SMART for keeping a close eye on the finances and the compliance with federal programs. Lastly, in the end of audit letter addressed to the board of directors, there are 3 sections. Section 1 with required communications. Here's where we would lay out any exceptions from our audit plan or major items that we need to bring to the board's attention. At the top of page 3, we point out significant estimates that are included in the financial statements, including the net pension liability, the net OPEB liability related to retiree healthcare, estimated liabilities for self-insurance claims, and the estimated reserve for state operating grants. We tested the assumptions and the inputs used to come up with these estimates. We think that they were fair and reasonable, and that's why we're able to give our clean audit report. After that, we have no other exceptions to bring to the board's attention. No difficulties encountered in performing the audit, no disagreements with management, no corrected or uncorrected misstatements identified as part of the audit. Sections 2 and 3 are recommendations and informational items to bring to the board's attention. Section 2 are items specific to SMART that we covered both with management prior to today, as well as with the audit committee earlier this afternoon. And section 3 are more general items that we do think are still of relevance to the agency and to the board. With that, we're happy to stop and entertain any questions that the board has.
Any question for the external auditor? Mr. Manico.
Thank you for the presentation earlier today. It was very, very well done, and we have a clean audit. I have two questions that probably maybe staff might have some light on, or the auditor. With the federal budget, I'm assuming hopefully that it will get extended as well as the state budget, which doesn't seem like we're going to have any progress until April of next year. Do we, if there's some interruption from either of these funding sources, what type of reserves will we have enough money in our reserves to cover those expenses as we proceed forward?
So barring a very prolonged government shutdown, SMART should be just fine. So if a shutdown lasts 30 to 60 days, SMART has adequate cash reserves on hand to cover those expenses. That wouldn't be ideal, but one important thing to remember is SMART kind of ebbs and flows in its cash balances throughout the year, as our property tax levy comes in the winter anyways. So that is generally the time of year when we have the highest cash reserves as it is, that slowly gets spent down over the next year.
Thank you.
Any other question? Seeing none, thank you. Like always, good job, well done.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Ryan, you need a motion to approve, receive and file.
Receive and file.
Mr. Chair, if I can make a motion to receive and file the audited fiscal year 2023 financial statements, the federal awards report, and the statement of auditing standard letter.
Motion been made and supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those who agree signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carry. Thank you.
Thank you.
And have a happy holiday. Okay, now we move to new business. Item A, resolution appointment of SMART representative and alternate to the Toledo Metropolitan Area Council of Government Board of Trustee.
Good afternoon, Chairman Haddis and members of the board. This agenda item seeks board approval of appointments to the Board of Trustees of the Toledo Metropolitan Area Council of Governments, or TMACOG. TMACOG revised its bylaws in accordance with a federal law passed in 2012 and added a seat on its Board of Trustees for a SMART representative. Staff recommends that the SMART board appoint board member Royce Manico and Deputy General Manager Tiffany Gunter as alternate.
Make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Motion been made and supported. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Manico.
This appointment, I've been representing the SMART board since 2020 on the TMACOG Board of Trustees. Representing Monroe County and Bedford Township, which is our largest township and a millage member for Monroe County, we have about $130,000 that gets passed through SMCOG to TMACOG, and that's supposed to be used for public transportation. So each year, as the work program comes forward, I'm very much interested in what they're doing with that money, how it's going to reflect on public transit, and that's extremely important. We also have a cooperative agreement, a franchise agreement between TARTA and Lake Erie Transit to provide Monroe County residents an opportunity to go to Franklin Park Mall, to go to the Veterans Clinic in Toledo, which is much closer than coming all the way to the city of Detroit. So there are some important things that we do have cooperative arrangements with them. And as part of the TMACOG planning area, it extends into Monroe County. And it's kind of a, it's very difficult because we have two council of governments serving Monroe County. We have SIMCOG and TMCOG. And so our urbanized area is the Toledo SMSA, which comes into Monroe County also. So there's a lot of money that seems to get passed back and forth. And we want to make sure that as it goes through TMCOG, the Board of Trustees, that we have a voting member there. And I've talked to Tiffany and to the general manager, and certainly with her experience at SIMCOG, that's going to be very helpful in when I'm not be able to attend those meetings. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other question? Thank you. Now we move to item B, resolution authorization to award we need a vote on this. Motion been made and supported. All those who agree signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Now we move to item B, resolution authorization to award a contract for general planning and consultant services.
So moved, Mr. Chair. Support.
Okay, Harmony.
Way too short for this. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Staff is recommending board approval of the resolution authorizing the award for general planning consultant services to HNTB Michigan. This contract will be used to utilize HNTB services to assist in the development, implementation, and execution of various planning studies and projects. Examples of potential projects are a bus stop and shelter improvement plan, an economic impact analysis, and project management services for the implementation of SMART's transit app. All projects will be conducted on a task order basis. The RFP process has produced 3 responses with a favorable proposal from HNTB Michigan for a 3-year contract not to exceed $1.7 million with 2 one-year renewal options for the subsequent amounts not to exceed $566,666.67 per year. The total contract is for an amount not to exceed $2,833,333.34. I'm available to answer questions.
Any question?
Yes, sir.
Hillary?
I have a question. Harmony, can you explain to us how this general planning consultant services, how it relates to or is different from the services that are being provided by Michael Baker Associates?
Sure. So Michael Baker is doing the Smarter Mobility Plan. It's a very project-specific plan that will result in recommendations related to our microtransit service and how that will interact with our fixed route service. So they are focused on that piece of it. While we're doing that, there are a lot of other things that we need to be working on. And so we wanted to not stretch their capacity and have them do another project, but reach out to some of the other resources in the area and be able to work with them to put them on some of these other tasks that I mentioned.
Harmony, will this contract look at the role of the community partner programs within the larger system?
That will be addressed by the Smarter Mobility Plan.
Any other question?
Will this, I'm sorry, one more time. Will this contract look at corridor improvements?
Yes, we will be looking
I
at
guess
that.
if this contract could look at anything you wanted to, right? Because you would
Right.
assign it and you have them on the bench, and then if you want them to do something, you assign them to do that.
Exactly. And I think it'll be an evolving process. The ones I mentioned are just examples to kind of get you to visualize what we're thinking, but I think it will change as the needs change.
Okay. Just to put the board on notice, I would imagine at some point we will probably come back depending upon the task given and how they may expand to ask to increase the not to exceed amount over the next 5-year period of time. That's highly likely. So I want the board to know, but based on what we are thinking right now, this should be sufficient but again, as things change, and that 1.7 may not be enough. So just want the board to be aware of that.
And can I just ask, and I'm sure this will happen, that like, let's say we get to January and you all make a determination that the first assignment is for them to take a look at bus stops.
Mhm.
Can you just inform us of
Oh,
that
absolutely.
and like what that work plan is so that we can be engaged in that as well?
One of the things that I'll say this, all of this you'll be informed of, because all of this is going to require your participation in any of it, because anything that comes out of it, more than likely is going to require board approval to be able to do it. Some of the things, just at a high level, there are certain things that policies that boards typically approve that haven't necessarily been brought to this board, but we will bring to this board. And so you'll have a lot more involvement in planning than you probably would want. And I'd make this suggestion, considering the extent, even if the board wanted to consider a subcommittee of a planning subcommittee of this board to hear more, that's certainly an opportunity to be able to provide, a higher level policy instruction and guidance if you so choose.
Watch out what you ask for.
I know
My only concern about that is it probably is relevant to a lot of, you know what I mean? Like everyone might want to be on that subcommittee, because I am struck by, we have a lot of really good planning underway. If you think about the apps and the smarter mobility and the community programs.
Well, the idea behind this is Harmony mentioned is how to bring all of it together. Quite frankly, one of the early tasks on this project will be a bus stop assessment. That's how many do we have? Where are they located? We haven't, as an organization, had rhyme or reason as to how we place bus stops. And there is a rhyme or reason to it. Do we have too many? Are they in the right location? As a service standard, one of the comments that was made today was about bus shelters. Well, which stops determine that you just get a pole in the ground? Which stops determine whether or not you get a bench? Which stops determine which kind of shelter you get? That will be predicated on ridership that this board would approve. There was another comment made in public comment about crowding. How many people? This board will adopt a service standard that will say that if you have a capacity of some number consistently, that means you have to add a vehicle. Those are things that this board has not been exposed to, but you will be exposed to going forward. So this is all part of that process. Because again, these are decisions that should not be made by staff. These are decisions that should be made by policymakers because they impact the entire community.
Just collaboration on the front end might help shape some of the decisions that
Absolutely.
we're making as well, because the Board of Commissioners is approving, for example, a grant program around placemaking. And, our planning department is going to implement that over the next months in terms of communities that are doing certain things, and whether that is in an area where there's, some public transportation, it's going to be relevant to collaborate on that.
Well, the other thing to note is this is also addressing a bandwidth issue.
Right.
As SMART evolves, and counties evolve, we have to be able to have the bandwidth on an as-need basis to do things that it really wouldn't be practical in order to be able to have staff to do. The other piece about this that makes it significant is a lot of this is funded through grants. So it doesn't necessarily have a direct impact on the operating budget. So there are some real benefits to this. And what we are doing, quite frankly, is a best practice for transit systems our size, particularly as we're undergoing the transformation, for lack of a better term, that we're going to be undergoing for the next few years.
Any other question,
John? To echo up Ms. Chambers' comments, Ms. Farrell, maybe one of the things that we can facilitate along with Harmony and the representatives from HNTB, the preferred vendor here, is potentially an onboarding with each of the board reps. So whether
absolutely.
it's joint, like we could set up Zoom calls or something, just so we maybe for each one of our respective geographies, we can put some priorities on the table, not only that we hear in public comment, but undoubtedly that we not only are working with our local providers. The other thing that I think that might be some value add too, as you said, as we kind of scale up to get some of those board policies in place with the board briefings, maybe we can make one service and planning. So whether there's anything of magnitude coming from HNTB Harmony, that might be a good arena for us to have a little bit of back and forth through the general manager and the chair.
Well, one of the things we're planning to do for next year for this board, we've already talked about it, is to give you board briefing on specific items before the board actually has to take an action on it. Whether that's a one-shot briefing or two-shot briefing or whatever the case may be, to make sure that we're moving in the right direction on what it is that we as staff think needs to be done.
You know, that's great. I think that's a great idea because I do really like the board briefings and I like the fact that there are some regular items on there, like the HR hiring update. So to the extent that there's big projects that are importance to us, having them on there every month so that we can keep track of them, I find that helpful.
So
I appreciate that.
if there are things in particular that you can think of now, just shoot us an email that this is something that I think we need to get more briefing on. One of the things we're working on, just for the public to know, not only do we are trying to address issues in terms of staffing with hourly employees and operators, we're also trying to address some administrative vacancies that we have as well. And so our goal for 2024 is to provide regular performance updates, whether they be ridership updates, on-time performance updates, whatever those may be, good, bad, or otherwise, so that the board and the public can see how SMART's performing.
Yeah, okay. We need to vote on this. I think motion been made and supported. All those who agree signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, motion carried. Now we move to 12C. Resolution authorization to approve a contract amendment number 1 for additional funding for the purchase of concrete services.
So moved.
Motion been made and supported. Mr. Lee Juamber.
Yes, good evening. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
All right. On behalf of SMART's Maintenance Department, it is the recommendation that the board adopts the attached resolution authorizing a contract amendment to increase the not to exceed amount for concrete services with Luigi Cement for an additional $200,000 and a new total not to exceed $285,000. On April 25th, 2019, the SMART Board approved a contract with Luigi for cement installation and repairs. The contract is currently in option year 2 with the expiration date of April 30th, 2024. With the expansion of service in Oakland County, there's a need for additional funds to cover the installation of bus stop cement pads before work is stopped due to freezing temperatures. The contract ratification in the amount not to exceed $200,000 is needed to complete the project. Pricing has been determined fair and reasonable. Any questions?
Any question for Mr. Burt? No, motion been made and supported. All those who agree signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, motion carried. Item 12D, resolution authorization to implement wage increases and changes to implement wage increases and changes to the benefit program for non-represented employee and to amend the general manager contract to reflect a wage increase. Mrs. Tiana.
Hello, Chairman Haddis and members of the board. My name is Tiana Leapart, and I'm here to ask for authorization to implement wage increases and to change the benefit program for non-represented employees. SMART is updating the benefit and compensation program for non-represented employees, and these changes have been included in the FY 2024 budget. We are asking for a 10% wage increase for our non-represented employees effective December the 11th. We are also asking to discontinue the benefit program, which is the defined benefit plan, and offer a defined contribution plan. This is for all new members of non-represented employees of SMART. It will be an effective date once the compliance program is set up by MERS. What this will include, it will include a vesting period of 5 years versus a 10-year vesting period. Employees would be required to the contribution amount for the employees would be 3% versus the 4.5% that was previously required. Under this plan, it would reduce again the vesting period. We are also asking to increase the employer contribution amount for the healthcare savings account from $137 monthly to $197 effective January 1st, 2024. And I am available for any questions.
Any question, Fiano? Seeing none, motion been made and supported. All those who agree signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carry. Item 12E, resolution AFSCME contract.
Good afternoon, Mr.
Danny.
Chair and members of the board. I am here on behalf of SMART staff asking the board to approve the contract between SMART and AFSCME Local 1786. SMART entered negotiations with AFSCME in 2022 and have recently reached a tentative agreement with a AFSCME ratification. This ratification would include a 14% pay increase effective immediately, an additional 10% pay increase effective January 1st, 2024, and then a pay increase of 8% on January 1st of 2025. There would also be a $1,500 ratification bonus given to all AFSCME employees. Additionally, as part of these agreements, we've seen different changes within the union. We have parlayed the job classifications within road supervision and terminal dispatch to be on par with central dispatch, which all handles mainly our fixed route deployed services. Our dispatch inspector supervision group, which handles our paratransit department right now, would get an additional $1 an hour raise as part of this to bring them up a little bit more equally to the other supervision groups. We have also incorporated, same with Teamsters, several different incentive programs. One of this is an attendance incentive that we saw with Teamsters that is aimed at improving attendance across the union and across the authority as a whole. Employees in the maintenance supervisor group would get an additional incentive pay for achieving and holding certain ASE certifications. One of them is related to bus repair categories, and the other one is aimed at electrical repairs. So there's additional incentives based on what ASE certifications each of those employees hold. We also incorporated a customer excellence incentive into this, as we did with Teamsters. This is towards our dispatch inspector group, who handles paratransit passengers as well as operators on a daily basis within their shift. As Tiana mentioned, we are also incorporating a new vesting period, moving from the defined contribution, or going, sorry, to a 401 defined contribution plan, which would reduce vesting from 10 years to 5 years, and would also include a 3% employee contribution. And then additionally, we're making a change to the tuition reimbursement program. So we're increasing that from $1,500 to $3,000 annually for undergraduate degrees, and then $4,000 for graduate degrees. And employees, to qualify for that, must have a B grade point average. So with that, I am here to answer any questions you may have.
Any question for Mr. Whitehouse? Jim.
Chair, will you remind me the number of AFSCME employees?
Yeah, we're looking about 80 employees at full budget.
As a supervisor.
Right.
Yes.
And the January 25 increase was,
It's 10%.
so it's 14, 10, and 10.
Yeah, so 14 would be a date of ratification effective immediately, then 10% this coming January, and then 8% January 1st of 2025.
14, 10, and 8.
Oh, 14, 10, and 8.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's comparable to what
right, okay.
the previous contract.
Yes.
And the incentives, you start with them?
So the incentives will be effective January 1st. There is a period for the customer excellence. It's quarterly. Attendance is quarterly. So that'll start January 1st. On the attendance side, we are going to start fresh with every employee. And as we progress through, they will earn that incentive.
Okay, I thought that they were incentives that you had to lose, but maybe I'm
Start fresh.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So if I have,
Everybody starts with the incentive.
Yes. And then you lose it based on certain parameters.
except for maybe the certification.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah. The certification incentive.
Right.
Yes. Once a maintenance supervisor were to obtain those ASC certifications in those groups, they would get that incentive as long as they continue to hold that certification, I should say.
And if you'll know, the incentive on electronics, considering that the future for us is going to be more and more either hybrid electric or electric vehicles of some kind. And so starting to transition our staff in terms of training in that effort is the first step in that.
Yes.
And so that's on top of the percentage increase.
Correct. Yes.
And what would you estimate that to be? It's a $2 an hour or?
So for the dispatch inspector group, they would be going from currently they are at $18.11, and they would be going up to about $21. So it's a significant jump. The employees who are in the road supervision group as well as terminal dispatch are going to see a larger increase over than 14 because we are bringing them up on par with the central dispatch group.
So one of the things that I want us to be clear on, all of these are supervisors.
Correct.
The titles don't necessarily reflect that, but each one of these groups that Danny mentioned is a supervisor that has responsibility to determine whether or not you are under the influence or not, or basically controlling what you do. And it just made sense to us that they all be compensated at the same level.
Yes.
To be able to reflect that supervisor is supervisor and service is service.
And
So that's why they were coming up to the level, because the central dispatchers had historically been paid more.
And Ms. Chambers, I misspoke. The dispatch inspectors are currently at $21. They're going to go up to $25 as part of this. And that's before the incentives.
Nice boost.
Yes.
It's a nice jump. Okay. All set? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Whitehouse, and I'm glad we settled with that. We have any union left?
Two, but you got
Two left.
We got it.
Okay. Motion been made and supported. All those who agree signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, motion carried. Congratulations, both. Excellent. Motion to go to closed session.
Mr. Chair, before we go into closed session, I'll make that motion, but I just wanted to know, as we're going to be discussing negotiation strategies, do we have any upcoming meetings with the ATU, just out of curiosity for the public?
I can take that one. Yes, so we are scheduled actually to meet in 2 full-day sessions on December 11th and December 12th. So next Monday and Tuesday, we will be working with ATU.
Thank you, Ms. Gunter. Appreciate it. And I make a motion, we move into closed
But
session.
hey, there is one more thing that the ATU, just to put this in some context, we're also dependent upon the ATU's international vice president's availability to do contract negotiations. So if that person is not available for a month, we can't talk to them for a month.
And that's largely been the delay that we've been experiencing, is trying to get that schedule and have that person available.
Because that person is negotiating contracts across the country.
And they're out of Minnesota.
This particular one is, yes, sir.
Thank you. I make a motion, we move into closed session.
I'll support it. Motion been made and supported. All those who agree signify by saying aye.
We need a roll call.
We need a roll call for that.
Yes,
Okay.
I'll take roll call. Chairperson, Mr. Abdul Haddis,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson, Mr. John Paul Rea,
Yes.
Ms. Hillary Chambers,
Yes.
Ms. Sheila Coe, Dr. Curtis Ivory, Mr. Royce Manico,
Yes.
and Mr. Brett Racigan.
Yes.